Good afternoon, everyone. It is Saturday, April 4th, 2020, and we're right in the middle of a big old crisis. I am shooting a video today that covers all of the material that's posted online for you to review before Test 3, which is coming up in about 3 weeks. This Test 3, it's marked on the assignment on the front page there, the Canvas homepage, but it's going to cover Chapter 35, page 885, through Chapter 37, page 933. That's what you'll see on the class schedule as well. Remember that we're skipping the jazz stuff, so the Charlie Parker, Dizzy Gillespie, all the bebop stuff. I'd love to cover that, but I just don't have the time, so I've got to skip over that. In the scores, you're going to cover score number 190, score 190 through score 202, and again, skipping the jazz score example, but you'll cover all the rest of the scores. So that's the book, that's the scores, that's the reading, that's all the listening assignments, of course. Beyond that, here's the video material that I would normally post for you guys to review, or some stuff that I use in class, and of course we're not having class, so I've got to have you go discover this yourself. The first big section you've got to deal with, and this will take you a lot of time this week, is this document right here. This is a document that I always pass out in class. What you really need to know are the people's names and the thing listed in boldface. Each one of these is a very famous American composer who I think is grossly overlooked in the book. Sometimes they're mentioned, sometimes they're not even mentioned, which I think is a shame. But they should be in the section that deals with American composers, where we're starting right now. So if we want to talk about Copland, great. If we want to talk about Gershwin, great. We should be talking about all of these dudes too, and we're not. So here's Walter Piston. His book Harmony is critical. Howard Hanson, his Second Symphony is his most famous. Virgil Thompson, his opera Four Saints and Three Acts is his most famous piece. So what I'm having you learn is the person's name and their most important work, whether that's a book or a composition or whatever it is. Each composer, it's different, right? Menotti, I'm all in the Night Visitors. Now, what I've done is this is the document I pass out in class, and this is really what you need to learn. Memorize the name, memorize the work in bold. But to familiarize yourself with these people, you're going to have to do a little discovery on your own. And this is more than I would normally ask the class to do. This is what I would do for you in class. You're going to have to get a feel for how much of this you need. I've given you way more than enough material, and trust me, I've only scratched the surface. If you hear something you like, go discover, because these guys were all fantastic composers. So here's the document I've created for you. It's the same as the previous document right here, but it's expanded with a whole bunch of links. So first of all, the first thing I did is right under the person's name, I gave you their wiki link. Just go to their Wikipedia page, poke around, read their biography. All of them are a couple of pages. They're not really long. And then I put active links for either a work that I like, a work that I think really demonstrates their style, various reasons I've put them here. So for example, Walter Piston, he's got 8 symphonies. They're all good. Here's a link to the 3rd symphony. It's a really good performance. I think his Concerto for Orchestra is fantastic. We talked about Bartók's Concerto for Orchestra. This one is way cool, and look at the date. It predates Bartók, which I think is really interesting. The Concertino for Piano and Orchestra, this is a really neat example because it has the score. You can look at his composition. His harmony book is on the shelf at the library, but of course you can't go to the library right now. It's kind of a bummer. I think it's still one of the great theory books out there. Dr. Taylor and I argue about that a little bit, but that's a conversation for another day. It's a great book. Howard Hanson, when a lot of people in academia went to focusing on 12-tone composition, one of the few schools that didn't was the Eastman School of Music, and it was run by this guy, Howard Hanson. Now, 12-tone composition was taught at Eastman, but not exclusively. And Hanson is often referred to as a neo-romantic. His Second Symphony, the one I've given you a link to, is actually the Romantic Symphony. This is the Peabody Conservatory Orchestra. This is contemporaries of yours. These are students your age playing this. For vocal people, I put Lament of Beowulf. It's one of my favorite vocal works from the early 20th century. For band people, you got to know Howard Hanson, his Chorale and Alleluia. Great piece of that. Also a good harmony book. He was a great champion of modern 20th century music. And you can find a lot of interesting stuff about him, both his compositions and how he championed other composers. It's all over the internet. Virgil Thompson, of course, was a great music critic, but he was also a talented composer. His most famous work is the opera Four Saints and Three Acts, rather racy opera written with Gertrude Stein. Here's a brief overview clip from the introduction. Like I say, tons of criticism from him. He spoke a lot about other people composing 20th century music. Interesting dude. Very opinionated dude. Interesting dude. I put his Concerto for Cello and Orchestra here. Selfish. I like it. And the Stabat Mater. We listened to this dude, Poulenc, in class. I thought you'd like a little compare and contrast. This is a beautiful piece. If you're a vocal person, this is a great piece for a recital with a string quartet. Really cool. Sam Barber, you guys all probably know for his Adagio for strings. What you may not know is that was originally a string quartet piece. It was only later reworked for the full string orchestra. So here's both versions. Again, I'm just selfish. I like his cello concerto, so here it is. Knoxville Summer of 1915. Again, one of the epic vocal works of the early 20th century. Every singer ought to sing it at some point. My favorite version is Don Upshaw. There's tons of versions of that on the internet. I put up a new recital Russell Thompson just did a couple of years ago. Really awesome with piano. So this is a piano version. There is an orchestral version as well. I left a little space just so everything was neat and tidy. William Schumann. A number of killer symphonies. His third is by far his most famous. This is a Bernstein performance with Vienna. Here's the bass clarinet excerpt. I just thought this was really funny. This guy plays really good. Check that out. Again, you could Google any one of these pieces. Check them out. They're really cool. Alan Havanas, Mountains of Everything. Over 400 works. Here's probably his most famous work, Symphony No. 2. 50 was Mount St. Helens, written right after Mount St. Helens exploded. Wynton Marsalis doing his thing. Always good. Giancarlo Menotti. This link takes you to the original TV performance that was broadcast right after the piece was written. Again, it's huge. It's epic. You don't have to watch the whole thing. But if you don't know it, familiarize yourself with his sound, with his style. David Diamond, 11 killer symphonies. I gave you Symphony No. 2. It's one of my favorites. His Kaddish for cello and orchestra is fantastic. This Concerto for String Quartet is really interesting. It was a very virtuosic piece for its time in the 1930s. This is an overview with a little narration. It's not the whole piece. It's really well done. Vincent Persichetti. Everybody in the music world ought to know Persichetti. He's brilliant as a composer. He's brilliant as a teacher as well. His parables, there are 25 of them for various combinations. Some are solo, some are chamber. There's one for band. This is the Parable for Horn. This is Eric Rusk from the Empire Brass Quintet. This is on our stage in Las Cruces. This was him performing live in Las Cruces, and he's playing it from memory. It makes me want to smack him. Perschetti's Ninth Symphony is just a really nice performance. The Divertimento Band, again, if you're a band person, this is a work you ought to know. So that's way more material than you really need to watch front to back. I understand that. So it's up to you to kind of go through it and get a feel for each composer's sound, each composer's style. Again, there's tons more works you can Google beyond those, but this is just an expanded document to help you explore those people, which I would normally do in class. In the book, we cover William Grant Still. I've included another piece by him, one of my favorites. This is In Memoriam of the Colored Soldier. This is a World War II piece. This is one of those places where I always like to say, why aren't we doing this piece? Why aren't we performing this piece? You know, every 4th of July we play Tchaikovsky's 1812 Overture. It's a great piece. What does it have to do with our independence? Well, there's a loose tie, but why aren't we playing this piece? We do Copland's Lincoln Portrait. It's a great piece. Why don't we play this piece? You listen to it and tell me what you think. Same with this one down here, Ulysses K. Another great African-American composer, totally overlooked. Great opera composer. This is a piece with narration. Once There Was a Man. Listen to it. If you know Copland's Lincoln Portrait, listen to this piece and you tell me why we don't do this every 4th of July, because I don't know. Florence Price is a composer we're just beginning to discover. There's a long documentary called The Caged Bird. This is, sorry, I've got email. This is called The Caged Bird, and this is just an overview of the documentary. It's really good. Her Piano Concerto in 1 movement. Just listen to the first little bit. You'll get it. It's a killer piece. Her First Symphony, very much modeled on Dvorak's New World Symphony. She was a disciple, and she kind of answers that call that Dvorak put out for nationalism in America. If you click on this and open it in a new link, you can get to her other symphonies, which are just now being premiered, even though they were written 60, 70 years ago. Then we get into the material that's more deeply covered in the book. Aaron Copland. Here's a little bio, self-portrait of him. This is a rare interview, Day at Night. There's a whole series of these, actually, that are really good. This was done in upstate New York, public television, mostly in the 60s and 70s. This dude named Day, and he did these interviews, and this is a really good one with Copland. George Gershwin, this is an introduction to his Rhapsody in Blue. When you click on it, it's going to open up this thing. And there is an active link where Paul Whiteman, the band conductor, is talking about the premiere and talking about George Gershwin. And read the document, listen to the music. Absolutely fascinating, really good stuff. Meet the composer Bernstein. Here again, click on this link. It's going to open for you. It takes you to an NPR document. It's a really great NPR documentary. And then again, there's narrative to read as well. And then you can see an interview with him. Messiaen. I always put Turangila up here. This is one of my favorite symphonies. Now look what I've done here. I absolutely want you to listen to the first few minutes and then skip to the last 2 minutes of the work. If you have time, I highly recommend it if you don't know Messiaen. Just put this sucker on in the background and let it play while you're doing something else. This is a killer piece of music, and it doesn't get performed often enough, and you'll see why. It's gnarly. It's a really, really hard piece. This is a wonderful documentary that was done by the Marine Band just a few years ago about the Quartet for the End of Time. You can read about Quartet for the End of Time in your book. Here's a great overview of it. We cover Benjamin Britten as we get toward the end of the section, and here's a great interview with him. This is discussion of his festival, the War Requiem. This is an overview of the War Requiem. Again, I'm not going to require all of this, but if you don't know it, you need to get to know some of this. This is the entire performance. This last link is the entire performance. It's a piece every musician on the planet ought to know, and very appropriate for this particular time. It's not a conventional war, but we got stuff going on, as you well know. So you've got 3 weeks to cover all of this material, plus, of course, what's in the book. Just know that this has a lot in it, and if you like music, and hopefully as a music major you do, you're going to want to go further than this. If you don't know Walter Piston and you start discovering his pieces, you might just go, wow, where have I been? David Diamond, wow, where have I been? These guys, I think, are overlooked, partially because they are tonal composers in the 20th century, where, at least in academia, that sort of became a sin. Oh, how dare I write tonal music, you know? Check them out. There's a lot of good stuff here. I'm available via email. I'm available via Canvas, and this is the next 3 weeks of your life in Music 303. If this first part gets too overwhelming for you, skip ahead to the Copeland stuff, to the other stuff for the paper. You've got a paper coming up in a couple of weeks, and if you need to move ahead to this, cover it, do it, use it for your paper, and then come back before the test to this material, that's fine. It's however you need to put it together. This is online learning. You got to pace yourself. There you go. A festive 12.5-minute introduction. I'm thinking about all of you. Kind of miss seeing you guys around. Stay safe. Stay healthy.